Darrius is a strange cameo in Mortal Kombat 1. There's an element to this cameo of doing something that only he provides. But to be honest, when we look at competitive gameplay, the only pairing we usually see Darrius with is Reiko, and that is for one reason: turning a command grab into big damage and maximizing the grappler archetype if that's how you want to play Reiko. However, there is so much more to Darrius as an individual cameo that we are yet to see in a competitive space. There's an interesting case to be made of various characters pairing well with him and providing more attacks than just his basic 2-bar roundhouse, and that really is all we tend to see at high level. So hopefully for today's video you can learn something about Darrius and maybe even start to experiment a little bit yourself. So let's talk about the basics first. Darrius is known mostly for your neutral cameo. This is a spinning kick that on hit will extend into various combos. The main use you see is for someone cancelling into the kick to create that spinning out animation and just simply comboing from that. However, this spin kick does have some built-in extensions, and here they are. When the spinning kick connects on hit or block, you are able to do forward cameo and engage the overhead flip. This overhead flip can be done on its own, and there's more to this, and I'll cover that in a second. If you press back and cameo when this spinning kick connects, you do a punch. Now this punch is armored and can go into another 2 extensions. Back cameo again will engage a twirling kick where you grab Darrius and fling him around, and then if you press forward cameo after this punch, a straight, almost jump kick animation will occur, which is both good damage and barely minus on block. -2 to be exact. The first extension off of the spinning kick that Darrius uses is not only armored and can be extended, but it launches on its own, particularly useful when you hit the opponent in the corner, although in the heat of a match, this punch, unless the opponent just does not know of its existence, is likely to not connect. Pressing back cameo on its own is the animation where you grab Darrius and spin him around. This will only cost half of your cameo meter, and on top of doing decent damage by itself, it's not too bad on block either. However, although this does decent chip damage, it isn't safe. A knowledgeable opponent will be able to flawless block that final hit, making it much more punishable on block. I said I was going to talk more about the overhead flip, and now is that time. It is arguably the most important move that Darrius could have. This is an overhead on its own, and on top of knocking the opponent on the floor, Darrius will go into an overhead heel kick. This is always an overhead, it's always safe, and it always launches. But there's a lot more to it than just that. The overhead essentially comes out on the first available frame. If the opponent were to try and wake-up attack this, the very first frame an attack can be landed, Darrius's overhead will come out. Using a well-timed button at the same time as this will armor break, but armor breaking is just the beginning of what this offers. It comes out as fast as possible. It hits as an overhead. Every character in the game has some kind of low, whether it's a low poke or a sweep or a string or a special move. Anything that can hit low here will activate an overhead low situation. Now I know what you're already thinking. If it hits overhead and low and there's no way for you to change this, how is this useful? Plus, the game has got a little bit of built-in hard-to-blockable protection. The answer to that is that by holding forward and cameo, you can delay when Darrius engages the overhead. Delaying this means that you are able to time when the overhead comes out, and this means using a low before the overhead becomes a low overhead hard to blockable. Not only does this create a mix-up situation that in the right situation can armor break, it can also beat delayed wake-ups. And this is the next element of why this overhead is quite good, but also not free. Delayed wake up is the #1 way to get out of a Darrius hard-to-block situation. It is up to the aggressive player to make the read that you're going to delay wake up and almost try to condition you, forcing an early stand. This is entirely up to you and how you time these situations, but because you can choose when this overhead comes out, you can do overhead low, low overhead. If you get the good timing, you can armor break. It's overall a pretty scary situation and not one that leaves you particularly unsafe yourself. But we've covered the basics and we've covered the simple element of what these moves do. How do you actually apply this? You've noticed that the overhead flip is quite slow on startup, and this brings with it some issues that Darrius overall has. Technically, every character in the game can set up this hard to block situation. The main way of doing this is to use his spinning kick first and extend that into overhead flip. Here's the problem. It's extremely expensive. You have to spend both cameo meters just for this one situation that the opponent can still either delay their wake up from, time their defense, maybe they can just block the overhead low or low overhead, and before you know it, you've spent your entire cameo meter, now it's gone, and the opponent is in a good situation. It is very expensive for most characters, but not every character, and that's where I've been trying to experiment. Could it be that the future of this cameo lies in the ability to set up this overhead flip without having to spend both bars of cameo to do it? Well, as it turns out, there are some characters that I've been able to see or I've been able to find myself. I've been trying to pay attention to what a lot of the community is doing that might be able to get this overhead for half of your meter with their own base moves to do so. The following characters are very much able to stun an opponent or put them in enough of a launch to make this overhead guaranteed mid-combo, ending the combo in the overhead low mix-up, or, as I said, low overhead sometimes. Some of, if not all, of Kitana's stun attacks are able to combo into the Darrius flip. Remember, these moves are best used at the end of a combo when you've already done a decent chunk of damage to set up into a mix-up into potentially another combo on top of it. Kitana has an easier time than most because she just stuns them for so long every single time. Another character that can do this effectively is Geras. Now this is going to extra help Geras as Darrius gives you extra HP. Geras is able to combo into his time stop, and a well-timed combo, ending it in Darrius' flip, will finish the time stop with his flip as the final hit, and you can go into whatever mix-up you desire. It doesn't end there for Geras. His forward 4-4, the string that is low starting and ends in a launch, can actually special cancel into the overhead flip before the final hit. This on its own will effortlessly allow the overhead flip to work, and the mix-up again is your choice. And finally, it isn't just Reiko that can combo off a command grab using Darrius' base cameo attack. Using your command grab in the corner with a well-timed Darrius spinning kick will let you combo off this rather easily. It is going to scale now. As of the patch, the command grab interrupted by something will scale more than it used to, but it's still around the roughly 300 damage domain, and if that's going to close out a round, it's definitely worth it. A character that can technically use Darrius' overhead in a combo is actually going to be Li Mei. Hers is less viable, sadly, as the only way I've really been able to see it so far is having a lantern on screen, hitting the forward 4-3, getting the traditional combo into the second lantern that we've all known since the beta, and getting the juggle high enough that you can combo into Darrius' flip. The problem here is that actually getting this situation is less than realistic, and mostly, you need a cameo that can actually combo into that setup, and Darrius isn't going to give that to you. Maybe there are some Li Mei players out there that can help me with this, but although it's technically possible, I don't think it's that realistic. Now, funnily enough, the best character I've had experiences playing Darrius with at the moment is Sub-Zero, and by best I mean the most fun. I know that Sub-Zero isn't exactly the greatest character in this game, and don't get me wrong, Darrius is not going to fix those gameplay holes that Sub-Zero currently features, but his Ice Clone up close, mid-combo, when timed correctly, is one of the best, most efficient ways at comboing into Darrius' overhead. This means that with your collective up-close tools, like your sweep, your overhead, your back three, Sub-Zero can create these tricky-to-block situations at various timings. Importantly here, he is also able to easily loop this. Should you land a successful launch, especially in the corner, another Ice Clone, well-timed, will allow a second overhead flip. And this is why it's important, because Darrius' overhead on its own costs one cameo bar, not the entire thing. If you are a character that can loop this situation, it's quite rewarding. A problem you're likely going to notice already is that it doesn't do huge damage every time it connects. This is definitely more about a chaining situations together to maybe end up with some really good damage, but that is just an overall issue that Sub-Zero has. A lot of the freezes, especially the Ice Clone, will just scale things like mad. Now, there could definitely be other characters in this game that can meterlessly, or maybe with meter, go into the 1-bar overhead flip. But I wanted to show the, I suppose, idea of this more than anything else, and I have been playing Sub-Zero and Darrius quite a lot. On a totally unrelated subject, I gotta say, playing Sub-Zero and Darrius online has not been a fun experience. I love the gameplay and I love the setups, but it just seems like people online do not like fighting Sub-Zero. I cannot tell you the sheer amount of one-and-dones, the Game 1 fatalities, the saying not-so-nice things over the in-game microphone and leaving. They'd message me probably if they could. There's just something about playing Sub-Zero online that has not particularly been a nice experience. This isn't even gameplay related. I think people just hate fighting this character. It's very strange. But overall, for today's video, I've had a lot of people send me clips, gameplay moments, where they're using Darrius with pretty much any character, and it all looks totally viable, nice and usable in the heat of a real match, and I love to see more tech for underused cameos. It's just the more clips I see, the more I realize that it is so expensive for what is essentially one individual situation, that I've been sitting here for a while just thinking, are there characters that can give you this same reward without having to commit to an entire cameo meter to do so? Because at the end of the day, the cameo gauge is one of the more important resources in the entire game, and if you do not have a cameo, it had better be for an incredibly good reason. And that reason being a one-time setup the opponent can just delay, wake up, or block successfully. I haven't seen that be the most useful yet, but there's always time for more stuff to be found, and like I said, I feel like the future of this cameo on its own could lie in getting 1-bar setups instead of 2. Maybe you'll disagree with me, maybe you just enjoyed the video, or maybe this video has helped you look into more of this stuff yourself. Either way, I appreciate you for checking this out, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.